You think the house flying over your head right now was built by genius engineers on Earth. It wasn't. Astronauts bolted it together in a vacuum while wearing oven mitts, falling at 17,500 miles per hour. This home is the size of a football field. 6 people live there. It has been continuously occupied for 24 years. Funding the project required $150 billion. But we are one rogue piece of trash away from losing it forever, and rebuilding it might be impossible. To understand why, we have to look back at the first time we tried to live in the sky. In 1971, the Soviet Union launched Salyut 1. Designers built it as a single metal tube. 3 cosmonauts stayed inside for 23 days. They proved humans could survive. During re-entry, a pressure valve jarred open. Air hissed out into the vacuum of space. They weren't wearing spacesuits. When the capsule landed, recovery crews opened the hatch to find 3 dead men sitting in their seats. America tried next in 1973 with Skylab. Launch day brought immediate trouble. A malfunctioning aerodynamic shield ripped off, tearing away one solar array and pinning the other against the hull. The station was overheating and starved of power, so the first crew flew up with a parasol and tin snips. Armed with tin snips, they cut the jammed metal and rigged a sunshield to cool it down. Saving the station required tools from a hardware store. These early stations were single blocks that couldn't be repaired. Russia launched Mir in 1986. Modular construction allowed pieces to be launched separately and joined in orbit. For 15 years, it survived a chemical fire, a collision with a cargo ship, and partial depressurization. Eventually, the station began to rot. Cosmonauts described it as living inside a machine that's trying to kill you slowly. Mold grew behind the instrument panels, eating the wiring. Yet Mir proved modular assembly was the only way forward. Creating a modular home in space requires absolute precision. Construction on the International Space Station began in 1998, when its first module roared into orbit. Building it required 16 nations, 42 assembly flights, and over 160 spacewalks. Without a single blueprint, components were built across different countries and launched on different rockets. Every component had to fit together perfectly on the first try. Imagine building a house where the kitchen is built in Germany, the bedroom in Japan, and they must lock together in a vacuum at orbital speed. Most terrestrial builders would stop here. Space does not allow that. Once the pieces are locked, you have to keep the crew alive. Void of air and water, the environment is lethal. Therefore, the station creates its own environment. Water is split with electricity to generate oxygen. Chemical filters scrub carbon dioxide from the cabin. All moisture is recycled, including sweat, breath, and urine. Recycling systems recover 93% of all wastewater on board. As the crew famously jokes, yesterday's coffee becomes tomorrow's coffee. Hydration is solved this way. Staying hydrated does not keep them in orbit. Even 250 miles up, there is a thin trace of atmosphere. Atmospheric gas creates drag, slowing the station and decaying its orbit. Without regular thruster boosts, it would fall and burn up. We are left with a house that is constantly falling, and it is falling through a shooting gallery. Over 30,000 pieces of space junk larger than a softball orbit the Earth. At 17,500 miles per hour, normal physics breaks down. One paint fleck chipped a station window. Another hazard appeared when a wrench dropped during a spacewalk became a tracked, lethal projectile. Just a single bolt at this speed hits with the force of a hand grenade. Puncturing the hull means the cabin depressurizes in seconds. Thrusters must fire regularly to steer clear of tracked space debris. Millions of smaller, untrackable particles are constantly sandblasting the walls. Against all odds, we have survived this shooting gallery for 24 years. If a catastrophic collision destroyed the station tomorrow, could we rebuild it? Gathering the blueprints to manufacture the parts again seems obvious. Except that is wrong. Original manufacturing plants no longer exist. The tooling is gone. The engineers who built it have retired. We cannot build copies of the old station. Starting over is the only option. And starting over means facing extreme orbital physics. First, we must survive the temperature swings. Orbits take 90 minutes. Every 45 minutes, it moves from absolute shadow to direct sunlight. Temperatures swing from -250 degrees to +250 degrees Fahrenheit. Metals expand in the heat and contract in the cold. Rigid structures would rip themselves apart without flexible joints and seals. Then we must assemble it. Modern rockets can only carry so much weight. Launching the station in separate modules allows us to connect them while floating in orbit. Cranes and scaffolding are useless in a vacuum. Instead, astronauts must work in pressurized suits that resist their every movement. Imagine trying to thread a needle wearing oven mitts. Turning a bolt without anchoring your feet will spin you in the opposite direction. Each turn of a wrench requires immense effort. Human limits are pushed by this exhausting work. Yet, the hardest part is not the engineering. Political barriers are the real obstacle. Our current station was built during a brief, hopeful window of global cooperation at the end of the Cold War. 16 nations worked together to build the largest structure ever placed in space. Today, that trust has dissolved. Space is now a competitive arena. Nations would not collaborate to rebuild it if the station fell tomorrow. They would scramble to claim its orbit. This house is more than a monument of engineering. Losing it means losing a relic of a time when we could agree on a home in the dark. Should it burn up, we might never go back. So tonight, when you look up, you might see that speck of light moving at 17,500 miles per hour. It is still up there, held together by stubbornness and duct tape. But if it falls, the sky will stay empty. If the station fell tomorrow, would we rebuild it together or build separate walls in the sky?